Okay.
Hey everybody, Scott Leese here with another episode of the Surf and Sales Podcast. My good buddy and partner, Richard Harris, is gallivanting around the country right now. Maybe he'll be able to barge in during this killer conversation we're about to have. Maybe not, we shall see. I am here with my good friend, Surf and Sales 3 alumnus and bitter sports rival, Kevin Dorsey. If you are able to watch the video right now, you'll see me in my San Francisco Giants hat, and this dude is wearing his blue and white LA Dodgers hat. How's it going, Kevin? Good to see you again, bro.
Hey, I'm living my best life, man. Doing everything I can, changing the world one cold call at a time, right? So that's what I'm doing.
Tell everybody where you're at for anybody who doesn't know. Tell everybody where you live and where you're working right now and what you're up to.
Yeah, so Kevin Dorsey, I'm the VP of Inside Sales at Patient Pop. We're a medical practice growth platform. And so it's headquartered in Santa Monica. I live in Marina del Rey. Born and mostly raised West Coast. I moved around a lot growing up. So I got like central ties in Wisconsin. Then I got my West Coast ties out here. And, you know, I'm loving life, man. Doing my best.
I forgot that you told me that you were kind of from Wisconsin, had roots back there when we were in Costa Rica a couple of months ago, and I had forgotten. So the first thing that pops in my head right now is like, we talk about personas a lot, right? What's the difference between selling to somebody in Wisconsin and selling to somebody in LA? How would you adjust your style, if at all? Genuineness.
So
you trying to say people in LA are not genuine? I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, throwing that out there. So there's two ways, right? So in the Midwest, it is more often than not, they are more upfront with what they are thinking or saying, whether it's good or bad. But you have to be careful that it's not the like passive aggressive, like, oh yeah, sure, no, this sounds great, and then they just never get back to you. So you got like ghosted more in the Midwest, but you knew where you stood more often. Selling West Coast, like it's hit or miss all over the place, right? It's like people will say one thing and then do something else, like completely outside the realm. There's a lot more like trying to behave like San Francisco in LA. Like everyone tries to be San Fran on the West Coast, even though you're not San Fran. So there's a lot of like, or like imposter type syndrome, or like, it's like your company's 10 people. What do you mean you're taking this procurement? Like, calm down. You got 10 people.
Yeah.
A little bit different between Midwest and then out on the West.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, I think people should pay attention to that a lot more. There's real geographical differences, for sure. Absolutely. I can remember taking advantage of some of this depending on, somebody told me one time, like, I think it was after maybe the Red Sox won the World Series a few years ago. It's like, we're calling Boston, we're calling Massachusetts and New England area today. You know why? Because all these people are in a good mood today. They're all going to pick up the phone, some cool geographical things. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and go into some, deep stuff, because you're a deep guy, and, we need more transparency and more courage, in the workforce, and in particular in the sales world. You wrote this post not too long ago, I don't think, that I called "I'm the Only," I think is what you called it, and that hit home. Tell everybody what that post was about, and where you're going, and give us some perspective, and then I'm going to follow up, with some questions about it.
Yeah, so I mean, the post was about, more often than not, I am the only in almost every leadership venue role ever. I'm the only black male, more often not just black individual, in the leadership room, in the boardroom, on stage, at a conference lineup. Like, I'm the only. This is something I grew up. Actually, it was a really hard thing for me for a long time, because when I moved from LA to the Midwest, I got moved to a very small town in Wisconsin where I was truly the only. I was the only black student in the entire school. I was one of 3 Black students in the entire county, right? And so I dealt with a lot of racism and a lot of discrimination. And that stuck with me for a long time. It was something that I carried as an insecurity for a long time, even once into the professional world. And so the post was about, being that only, but then also calling out all the other onlys, right? That like you might be the only, but there's people around that see you, and that they also, like, you inspire them to be like, hey, like I could get to that. So it's not just being the only Black, right? You could be the only woman, you could be the only, LGBT, you could be the only white person in a room, right? But like that people look to that and it can inspire them, right? But to not hold it against yourself to be the only. Because I shied away from a lot of opportunities. I pretended to be someone I wasn't for a long time, right? Like,
can you give an example? So you say you pretended to be somebody for a long time. Like, give me and the audience examples, right? Because this is a perspective that I don't have to go through this. As a white male American, I am privileged in all the ways that we are, right? And so what does that mean when you say you had to act or behave a particular way? What did you have to do differently? What do you still have to do differently?
The persona that people see now of KD is as close to me as I can be in a professional setting, right? I wear all Black. I wear my Black hat. I've got my gold chain. I swear when I want to. I carry myself with a lot of energy and, like, people call it whatever, swag or confidence or whatever. Like, that's who I am. For a long time, I'm talking years, right? I dressed differently. I spoke differently. I participated in like things or hobbies that I didn't truly enjoy, but that's what people did. So I wanted to feel welcomed. I literally didn't swear for 3 years. Like, walking into a room, I literally have to take deep breaths going in, because whether it's true or not, when you are the only when you walk in, people look at you and you can carry that weight, right? And so sometimes it was like putting on a persona of like that it didn't bother me, when really like it drove me nuts, right? People would make jokes, right? Like, they make a Black joke, they make a racial joke, right? And it's like you kind of either have to laugh it off, like, whatever. Like, now I don't, right? Like, I'll snap on cats. And so it's a lot of things like that where you try to fit in and you try to change who you are to be accepted by everyone else. But then now you're no one. You're not yourself, and you're still never going to be accepted as one of them, because you're not one of them. You're not. I will never.
I don't know the statistics on this, and I don't know if you do, but I wonder, do you feel an increased weight and pressure to succeed as somebody who is an African American and a VP of sales in the tech world, in the startup world, because there's not as many, right? Do you feel a sense of like breaking down barriers in a way? I don't want to be too hyperbolic, but like, Jackie
Yes.
Robinson broke down barriers, right? I'm talking to a Dodgers fan, right? Like, if you continue to grow in your career and excel time and time again, do you feel a weight and responsibility? Like, I need to do well because there's another group of people out there, coming up. There's other people who maybe are looking up to me. Do you feel that?
Absolutely. So yes is the answer, but where I feel it more is, I guess, doing it in what I believe is the right way, right? Where I not necessarily conformed, or I didn't like, a term that I grew up with often, and, I'm sure some of the other minorities listeners could relate with, is changing your stripes, right? My pops called it zebra mode, right? You had your black stripes, you had your white stripes, and you knew when you had to flip them on and off, right? Like, you'd be one person with your boys and then another person, right, when you walked into the meeting, and then another person. You played that game. And what's important to me is, I may never be a VP or CRO at a Fortune 100 like public company. I may not ever crack that ceiling. but I'd rather continue to succeed the way that I am, being as real as I can, showing people that they can be real. After every presentation I give at any conference, every single time, there will be one or two Black men or women that will come up afterwards and say, thank you for being real. Thank you for being authentic. Thank you for being you. I've had people come up and say, like, are you always this way? Like, is this, like, when do you turn it off? And I say, I don't anymore. I used to.
Yeah.
I don't turn this off anymore.
What gave you the confidence, or what changed? What was the tipping point where you're like, you know what? I'm not trying to hide who I am. I'm not trying to fake it. I'm not trying to apologize. Like, what was the tipping point? Where did you get that extra gear or that increased level of confidence?
It's when it didn't work. You know, like,
say that again. When it didn't work,
I played the game. I did all the things, right? And I still had to deal with things. I still wasn't accepted. I still wasn't happy, right? Like, I played the game and it didn't work. So why play the game and have it not work and not be happy with who I am versus be who I am? And because then it's all real, right? Like, then I know you're just not accepting me, and that's fine. Like, then I know it, right? There's no game anymore. Like, you just don't like me for who I am, and that's perfectly fine. So it wasn't working, right? I got replaced in roles. I got overshadowed. I got overlooked, and I was playing the game. And it got to a certain point, I was like, you know, screw this. Like, I'd rather be me. And what's funny is, like, my results got better when I did.
Mm-hmm.
Because people can tell. People, like, whether they'll admit it or not, whether it's biological or not, they can tell when you're not really being you, and that causes immediate trust issues no matter what, right? Is they don't trust you. I didn't get close with people. I didn't allow people to get close because I was afraid they'd know who I really was, right?
Yeah.
So I stopped playing that game, and that was a big shift. It's not, and I'm by no means am I saying that I'm over it, that I don't think about it, that is not still that I have to take that breath before a board meeting, or I have to take that breath before walking on stage and going, okay, like, here I am, you know, like, for a long time, it messed with me. It really did.
You know, you just mentioned, you know, walking on stage, and a year ago or so, a little less than a year maybe, you and I were supposed to go on stage together at Rainmaker in Atlanta, and unfortunately, I had some health issues and some other things going on. I wasn't able to go to that. But you told a story about, you know, how you and I first kind of met and connected, and you know, that got me thinking. And we talked about this a little bit leading up to the podcast. But you know, how does one go about finding a mentor? You know, for me, like, I didn't have all these platforms, and Richard has now joined us, and you know, he didn't have these platforms either when we were, you know, 25, 30 years old, right? Where it was easy to connect with so many people. But now all these things exist, but still people struggle to find a mentor or you know, coach or whatever. I get messages all the time. It's like, hey Scott, I don't know if you do this, but you know, I'm looking for like a mentor and a sales coach or whatnot. What advice do you have? And feel free to tell the story if you want about, you know, how we first connected, but teach our audience like some ways to go about, you know, finding a good mentor, and maybe talk about what it means and what it's meant to you.
So I think there's a couple things. One, most people, they know what to do. They're just afraid to. They're afraid to ask for mentorship, right? The amount of people that do reach out, and what's funny, people reach out to me, I'm sure you get this too. It's like, how do you find a mentor?
Yeah, so exactly.
You reach out to them.
You ask.
Right, like you ask.
Yeah.
Now,
shoot your shot.
Okay. What people forget though is, you know, in a way similar to sales, it is a numbers game, right? You and I had talked about this. I reached out to 5 VPs a week for over a year looking for mentorship.
Do that math, people. 52 weeks, 5 people a week, right?
Whatever, like
250 something, right?
For a year straight looking for mentorship. And like we showed this on stage. It was like, I showed my second message actually to you, which was, right, like, I'm a first-time VP. I'm sure you've made mistakes along the way. I'd love to learn, right, like some of the things that you've done. Here's why I believe you can help me. You've done it before. You've done X, Y, Z, right? And what's funny is, like, I reached out to a lot of people once. You were one of like a handful of people I reached out to twice, because the persona that you put out was someone that I felt I could resonate with, right? Because I felt you also kept things real, that you were authentic, right? There are a lot of people, and whatever, we'll say this on camera, I don't give a fuck. There's a lot of personas out there that are very different. I know because I've spoken to them. There are people that I've reached out to that I'm like, ooh, I want this person to mentor me. Ooh, they have been very successful. And then I get to talk to them and I go, wow, that wasn't right. That wasn't who they claimed to be or what they claimed to do, right? Yeah. So some of the you learn, but you reach out to a lot. And then also you have to follow up and you have to follow through, right? If you were giving me advice and I never did it, would you stay my mentor?
That is the death of mentorship, you know. Yeah. You ask me for advice, for guidance. I give you what I think is the right things, and you don't do it. I'm wasting my time now, right?
And what a lot of mentees forget about a mentor is the mentor is not there to make you feel good. That's what your friends are for, right? If you have limited amount of time with me, or I have limited amount of time with you, I don't need you to fluff me up and make me feel good about what I'm doing. We've got an hour. It is to rough me up a little bit. It is to say, no, you don't know what you're doing. This isn't right. Here's how you fix it. And most people, when they're looking for a mentorship, they're not ready for the feedback. They're not ready for someone to say, no, that's wrong.
Katie, what do you have to say to yourself to say, I'm ready for this feedback, right? Like, what's the advice because to your point, like, I think you're right. People love to ask for advice, but then they don't want to take it. So, and maybe there's two pieces. What should the mentor say to someone who says, hey, I want you to be my mentor, to let them know this is how it's going to go? And what frame of reference and mindset do you as an individual need to be at to be ready to do that?
Really, really good. So on the mentor side, I am very upfront. Anyone that asks me for mentorship, I am very upfront from the get-go, right? To what Scott was saying is like, I expect you to follow through on what we talk about. And if you don't, we don't continue. It's not about talking about new things. If you didn't do the thing we talked about last time, this doesn't continue. You don't make our scheduled calls, this doesn't happen, right? Like, I don't charge for mentees, right? Like, it's not where I need to make my money. I make my money somewhere else, right? But like, so I'm very upfront from the beginning to set that. But also I tell them, like, this is how I communicate. So to touch back on what Scott is like, you also need to reach out to mentors that you can resonate with, right? If you want someone who's going to coddle you, probably not me, right?
But let me add to what Kevin just said, because, you know, I also heard him say he reached out to people that he thought he would connect with and resonate with, but then he took the extra step and spoke to them before just like automatically signing the dotted line, this is going to be my mentor. He talked to a few people and he was like, whoa, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's important that people go beyond whatever the persona is that's out there, right? Like, find some people. That's why you reach out to so many, right? Reach out to all these people. I think these people could be good fits. Let me try to talk to as many as I can find. And when I find the right one, right, and then we connect, that's where I sign up.
You're interviewing them.
The second part of this, though, before every mentorship call, when Scott and I had a mentorship call 2 weeks ago, right?
A couple weeks ago,
right?
Yeah.
I even put this in the text messages as like, I'm not done learning from you yet, right? So the mindset that I go into when I'm having my calls with my mentors, literally like what I tell myself before the calls, this person knows more than I do. And it's the truth. They know more than I do. Scott is a very close mentor of mine, and he has gone through more than I have. He has experienced things that I haven't experienced yet. He's messed up things that I haven't messed up yet. He actually said that on the last call. He's like, man, like, I wish someone had gotten this shit wrong and then told me about it.
That's right.
Like,
yeah.
So it's the mind. I go into a mentorship call knowing this person knows more than I do. And what's interesting, like I say like 4 core mentors, like people I'm very close with. They all give me something different, right? They come from different backgrounds. There's things that they know more of.
What are those things? Like, and you don't necessarily have to name names, but Scott gives you what, another person gives you this.
So what I love with working with Scott is the scaling process, right? Like he knows how to take something from 0 and get it up to 150, managing up, right? Because he's dealt with all sorts of different types of founders, but he also never sold his soul doing it. He takes care of people. He cares about people, right? And so I can ask him, like, man, like I'm ready just to chop everybody's fucking head off and walk me back.
Oh, he's done that, by the way. I can tell you.
That's one of the mistakes. I didn't have nobody telling me, hey, you got to do it differently, right? 15 years ago.
Not true either. So.
That Scott gives me, like our conversations are very tactical. I'm like, yo, I'm kind of struggling with this, or I'm running into this, and you know, he'll ask like kind of what I'm doing, and I'll give some examples, but then he's also very quick to be like, no, see, here's what that's going to lead to. And he can A, B, C, D set me up for it. I have another mentor that's way more, I would say, like one of my mentors is also an African-American male, and we do talk about those things. Talk about like, how do you deal with this? What happened when you did this? Is this okay or not? Right? Like, I feel like I may not be getting paid what I'm worth. How have you dealt with that? Right? And so we talk about those sorts of things, right? I have another mentor that's really just like, it's high level shit. Like just my bonkers fucking ideas, right? Of like, and he like, yeah, that probably won't work, or that's a good idea. And it's more of that type of stuff. So it's a good mix where, you know, and sometimes too, like I have mentors that I think like Scott and I were just riffing before this started, like talking about LinkedIn, right? I think I actually can provide a little bit of value to Scott around LinkedIn, right? Like I've learned a little bit there. And so I'm sharing that. So it becomes a really good relationship. So rounding out, because having one point of failure also isn't good, right? Of like, you have one mentor, okay, like great. Do they know your world? Right? I cannot express how lucky I am to have Scott in my life. This isn't supposed to be cheesy, but I'll say it. Like, who else like has scaled teams as often as he has, as well as he had in SMB type markets, bootstrapped and then going through the raises 3 times ahead of me, right? Like he's done it, he's in it, and he can share it. Like, no, there's no one even close for me to learn from around this stuff, right? And so I'm very lucky, right? If I had a mentor, but I have no mentors, by the way, that sold enterprise. I don't sell it.
That's self-awareness, you know, and that's important for people to understand, right? You know, you know the market and the field you're playing in, and so you surround yourself with people who can help you go very deep in that particular, you know, niche.
To touch on that real quick, so one of my other close mentors is Dave Brock, right? The author, sales manager, survival guy, partners in excellence, right? He does a lot of consulting, but I'm not talking to him about sales tactics, right? I'm not talking to him about like scripting, how, you know, Scott, you and I have riffed on that, right? I'm talking to him more on, okay, like managing managers, right? What boards look for, how to manage up better. What are things that he looks for in a future leader, right? Like some of those things, like he has way more experience than I did, and he's worked in, because he takes over a lot of companies. He's seen all the inner workings, and he comes from not the SaaS space, right? Like he works in the SaaS space, but he comes from outside of the SaaS space, which is valuable, right? And so to be able to have that mix is really important.
Let's change gears for a second here, and you know, you are one of the few guests so far that we've had on the podcast who've actually been to the Surf and Sales event. Contrary to a lot of belief that's out there, you do not have to be a surfer in order to go to the event. Kevin's not a surfer. Kevin came out there and gave it a good crack a few times. Why, in your own words, right? In your own words, like what was the value that you got out of the event, right? And why do you think other people should consider it?
It's funny because, you know, we talked about the event before we'd even gone, right? Actually, I think we all hopped on a webinar and we talked
along with Scott Barker too. Yeah.
and we talked about it of what we were looking forward to. And what I said then was the connection, right? Like the closeness, the community, because we all know each other, but we aren't connected, right? Like we don't actually know each other. And I was so excited to be around people that thought that way. And it actually delivered on that, right? Like you can go to I go to conferences, they're great, right? Whatever. But like, this is one where we are slacking and texting each other today, right? One of the alumni just got promoted to AE. And what are we all, right? Phil, my boy, you're out there.
Yeah, Phil. Shout out to Phil at Air Call.
So like we're congratulating each other around that. So that community was one, but also, especially if you're a sales leader, I'll say this first for a sales leader, the ideas that you come up with when you're not in the same place, right? Like when you're not in the same place with the same people in the same setup, listening to the same speeches, like you're not going to come up with great ideas. When I'm sitting there listening to you talk, or Richard, like you talking on scripting and like how you scale things out, Richard talking on mental health, Barker talking on brand building, right? Like the ideas that come from that, because I'm sitting in Costa Rica, right? No shoes on, like just able to think, having time to think. Because that's what I don't enjoy about a lot of the other conferences is like, okay, session, lunch, session, happy hour, party, sleep, do it again. There's not even time to process it. So some of that downtime to process what was being discussed there was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. It's one of the best experiences around, I'd say, like sales conferences I've ever had. Even though I got hit in the face with the board, right, and then like retired from. I was.
It was a very small knock to the head. Okay, and let's not scare the audience too much. All right.
Well worth it.
I know you got a hard stop coming up. So what? How can we be helpful to you, man? I know we have an open dialogue all the time and everything, but it's a part of our show here to try to offer up advice or any kind of help that our guests might need. So what can Richard and I do to continue to support and help you? And what, if any, specific questions or things that you're facing right now? What can we talk about and try to give you some advice on?
I mean, the number one way you guys can help is doing what you're doing, because you're sales leaders and sales practitioners that still care about people. And like that I don't think that gets talked about enough. It's always a number. It's always what's next. It's always crush hard this and never stop working that and everything. And you guys are spreading a message that is different than what's out there, right? And I think that's what's missing. It's why even the sales industry has the persona that it does, because like no one cared about the people, which caused the people to not care about the customers, which caused the customers to not care for salespeople. And here we are, right? So continuing that message is so important.
I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and they literally were asking me like, where does my satisfaction come with my efforts, and work that I do on LinkedIn? Is it the vanity metrics? Is it the business that I might get from it? Is it the likes and all this stuff? And I said, the dopamine hit for me is when I'm blessed by somebody sharing, a direct message with me that says, "Hey Scott, I know you don't know who I am, but your advice and some of the things that you said have really helped me, and it means a lot. And don't let the, bastards get you down. Keep on trucking," right? And man, that's the dopamine hit right there. Yeah. That's the hit where it's like, okay, I can keep going now, because I want to quit sometimes, to be honest with you. I get bored sometimes. I don't like the sense that I have to produce 40 pieces of content a day in order to, feel like I'm making a difference. I'm just not that way. Like I don't write something unless the spirit moves me unless I'm motivated to do so, you know.
Real quick,
But when people read
super fast, anyone that's listening right now that's like, oh, I'm going to build my brand this year, please rewind and listen to what Scott just said, though. Because if you're just going to go out and post the same generic shit that everyone else is posting out there just because you're trying to, like, build your brand, one, it's not going to work. And two, it just makes everything worse. Like, speak from the heart, speak for what you care about, but we don't need 10,000 people giving cold call tips. For fuck's sake. Like, stop. That's right. So, sorry.
The phone is not dead. You don't need to do that anymore.
Say what?
Yeah.
You need to do the phone is not dead.
Oh, God, if I see one more post on phone's dead, email's dead, social's dead. What is it? Face-to-face is dead. Basically, SDRs are dead, AEs are dead. Everything's
dead. That should be your post, by the way.
I'll write.
You should go right there, Kevin, and post that.
Just to try to finish off my thought, though, but, you know, at the end of the day, man, this is about people. You know, this is about the impact that you can make on lives. And, you know, I know that might sound dramatic, maybe especially for people who don't know me, but I'm, you know, 50% Italian. I am dramatic a little bit, you know, but it's about the impact that you make on people's lives and people that you don't even know very well, you know, and those messages, you know, mean a lot. And that's ultimately why, you know, I remain active and engaged, you know, and I think everybody should kind of operate with that in mind. Leaders and sales leaders in particular, but everybody should operate with that in mind. You know, am I helping somebody with whatever I'm putting out there, or is this just pure selfish and vanity and whatnot, right? Like, what is somebody going to be able to do with whatever message I put out there? I had this conversation with Sahil, and he made a post about it, and he was like, you know, how do we know that the advice is actually working that people are putting out there? How do we gauge that? And you know, it was like, well, I only know when people write me back and say, you know, you fucking help me, right? And so I don't track that, right? I just get it and receive it and feel it and try to, you know, put it all back out there and stuff. So anyway,
I think to wrap on that, it's two things there. Is one, like, if, you know, the advice that you give, like, oftentimes with my posts, actually today is a perfect example. I posted today what I did yesterday. Like, not, hey, you should go do this, or here's an idea. It's like, this is exactly what I did with my team yesterday. So it's like being able to speak to actually doing it is one of the big ways to show people, like, yo, this shit works, right? Like, here's literally what I took my team through. This isn't like high level, right? You could ask my team. There's a picture of it, actually. It's all right there, right? But then the flip side, to bring this full circle for me, you know, you asked me earlier, you know, if I feel like the pressure.
Yeah, the burden. Yeah.
You know, who I am and who I represent. And the answer is yes, but it's also what keeps pushing me, because very similar to you, I don't necessarily enjoy it. I don't necessarily wake up being like, all right, here we go, right? I can't wait for, like, the comments and the bullshit and everything else that comes with it. But I do know there's another young Black male or female out there that sees that and goes, I want to be that someday.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful stuff right there. And that's a good way to wrap it. And if, I mean, Kevin would be a phenomenal mentor and boss for anybody who's out there listening, but in particular, you know, as he just said, if you're a up and coming young African-American man or woman, you know, reach out to Kevin. You can find him on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way. Kevin Dorsey, right? Appreciate you having on the show, man. You know, I got nothing but love for you, despite the fact that you got a Dodgers hat on still.
Oh, baby. LA, let's go.
Yeah. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later, man. Appreciate it.
See you, KD.
Later, Richard.